Hey everyone, today we're speaking with Sheryl, the state lead for the People's Movement in California. Hi, Sheryl.
Good morning, Ms. Vera.
So my first question for those who have not heard about the People's Movement yet, can you briefly explain what it's about and what are your goals?
Absolutely. The People's Movement is 50 states strong. We are, the states are the movement. We are representing, hopefully, the people of the United States of America in ending the state of emergency, both at the federal and the state levels. There are also laws that are being passed underneath these states of emergency without people's knowledge or permission. So our main goal is to make sure that we get information out to the people who don't understand that this is happening so that they can have their voices heard. This is a human rights issue. This has nothing to do with left or right or blue or red or black or white or pink, purple or polka dot. We're all, humans with the right to choose our medical decisions, and that's not being allowed.
So let's talk a little bit about the state of emergency. Supporters of the state of emergency argue that this gives the opportunity for the government to fight the pandemic, to dedicate their resources, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people are confused because they don't understand why is the state of emergency, why is it bad for the economy, for the nation? So one of your goals is to remove the state of emergency. Can you explain your position?
Yes, ma'am. The state of emergency was put into place in March of 2020 under the appropriate need for the state of emergency at that time to release resources, funds, staffing, et cetera, in a state of emergency. We didn't know what we were dealing with. We needed to protect our most vulnerable. The states needed an opportunity to keep the schools open, our businesses open. That didn't happen, as we all know. But what's happened subsequently is that this state of emergency has been used to dictate to the American people what our medical choices should be. That it's overreaching its original and intended purpose, that doctors should be allowed to treat each of us as individuals. I am not you, you are not me. We each have individual needs. And the government should not be practicing medicine. They should not be dictating our medical care or our medical decisions. And we should be free as the American people to choose and work with our doctors in a way that is for our best interest without fear of interference or retribution from our government. That's inappropriate. It's an inappropriate use of this state of emergency. Plus, they have the ability to sign things into law without putting them on ballots. This is happening specifically in California. There's less than 20, I believe. There's a map on our page in the People's Movement of California. We have maps and information about which states are still have a state of emergency, but there is still a federal state of emergency. Most people don't realize this because, it's not quote unquote affecting most of us in our real lives.
So speaking about the state of emergency, last time I checked, which was yesterday, there are still 14 states in the nation that have state of emergency in place, and California is one of them. Unless renewed, our state of emergency can expire by the end of this month. So do you think the governor will allow it to expire?
I do not. I do not think that he will allow it to expire. They're trying to pass laws to continue to control our medical decisions. And as long as, so some of these laws, some of these bills that they were trying to push through, there were originally 10 of them. Then there were 16. Now we're back down to 10. And the reason that we're back down to 10 is there are 6 of these that expired. They are supposedly dead. And how that happens is there's a deadline that's set that if a bill does not pass the floor of the House in which it was originated by a certain date, that bill is considered dead. The reason they need the state of emergency to stay in place, one of many, is that as long as that state of emergency is in place, none of these things are ever off the table. Buffy Wicks wrote a bill, 1993, AB 1993, that was going to require vaccinations for everyone in the state of California who wanted to have a job, whether you're a W-2 or a 1099 employee. If you wanted to work in the state of California, you are going to need to be mandatory vaccinated. This is now, quote unquote, a dead bill. As long as the state of emergency is in place, these things can be, revived. They can be rewritten, given another number, and reintroduced. And these bills are passing through the Senate and the Assembly at the state levels without people's knowledge or permission. Specifically in California, Governor Newsom talks about his SMARTER plan. And all of these bills are what is underneath this SMARTER plan. But you never hear in the media, or you never hear our elected officials talking about these bills. They've fast-tracked them. A bill needs to be written, and then it sits for whatever reason. The law is it sits and ages for approximately 30 days before it's introduced into its first committee. That's not what's happening here. These bills are being fast-tracked into our system and into the committees of the legislature in about 2 weeks after being written. They're trying to push these through under the radar. And even though, the people's movement, specifically in California, we are on the phone in these hearings, we are in the room with these hearings, we are on these hearings. In order to make sure that our opposition is heard to these bills. And I watch as, people show up in person, they're on the phone. The larger portion of the voices are in opposition to these bills, and these committees are passing them through anyway. So even they're trying to pass them through without our voices. And even when we find out and we get in there and say, no, we don't want this, they still push these things through anyway.
Why do you think this is happening?
I know that there is a Democratic senator who has said that our legislature in California specifically has taken money to push the vaccines. And that if they stop pushing the vaccines, they have to return the money. The short answer is money, funding specifically. There's a bill, 1479. It's the school testing bill. And if you read the bill, and I've had to learn to read legalese, which is not easy, because they write these bills in such a way that you walk away and go, what? What are you trying to do? But this bill specifically, they talk about they want to test the children. They want to test the children because they're the biggest risk, or they're the biggest spreaders. And the science doesn't support that. So if you go through this bill, they're talking about safety when they talk about this bill in person, in the floor, in the committees, they're talking about safety. If you read the bill, safety never appears in the language in the bill. What appears in the language in the bill is funding. At the very beginning of the COVID event, it was the American Rescue Plan, I believe it was, that released funds to the states to keep the schools open. And they didn't use it to keep the schools open. Now, the big omnibus bill, the big 2,700-page super bill that got pushed through at the federal level recently that no one had a chance to read, allowed for funding for COVID to more funding at the federal level without explaining what they did with the first set of funding. And the qualification on that next level of COVID funding at the federal level was, in order to get it, the states had to return any unused portion of that original distribution, yes. So what California is doing is they are trying to utilize that money. They're setting up departments to test the children unnecessarily in order to keep the funding. It's about funding. And every level you look at in this entire situation, in my opinion, and every bit of research that I have done, the bottom line answer is funding.
So let's talk about California controversial pandemic-related bills. So there were 10 of them. Out of those 10 bills, how many have already passed?
How many have already passed? We have 2 that are, well, they've passed through, many of them have passed through their the House of Origination and into the second house. So if it's an AB bill, it's an assembly bill. And there are 2 specifically that are about to go through the second house. They're both AB bills, assembly bills. They are now in the Senate, and they are about to be passed. Here's the really good news, because this all sounds so dark and terrifying, and frankly, it is. However, a little bit of resistance goes a really long way. And we are not the only people standing up and fighting. There are many, many groups in California that work in conjunction with each other to say, no, this is not okay. One of the bills that they're about to pass through the Senate, to really pass, is written by a guy named Weiner. So that's fun. And he wrote SB 866, which wants to allow children from the age of 12 and older to be vaccinated without their parental permission or consent. And he says that, well, the doctors will be able to talk with you, with your children, to be able to give them good information, to help them make informed decisions about the risks, etc. Well, they've also got AB 2098, which is going to directly contradict what he's saying. Those doctors will not be able to talk with anyone about anything other than the vaccination if that one is passed. And they're both neck and neck trying to go through the Senate right now. The really good news is on SB 866 in the last hearing, they had to bring in a senator. They don't have the votes. So here in California, we have a supermajority. That means 70% of our legislature is one party. And quite often, the Democrats will abstain from these votes. They don't want to vote directly against their party. And we've come to understand that that actually works in our favor. So when they abstain from something, we're really grateful because it's not a yay vote. So in this particular situation, this only passed the last committee 6-4. That's huge. These things usually pass almost unanimously with only 1 or 2 nay votes. And one of the nay votes on SB 866 was a Democrat. Bless his heart. And so our pages make sure that we push out who voted in which direction, because we always call and contact those that vote in the direction that helps protect the rights of the people, regardless of party, and say, thank you so much. Or even if you abstain from voting. So we thank those who abstain as well.
Thank you, Sheryl. So my next question, out of the bills that are currently on the floor, which ones concern you most and why?
Which one concerns me? Well, they all concern me, really. I mean, the one that really concerns me is AB 2098. you're going to be asking doctors to act against their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And I find that horrifying. I believe that the relationship between a doctor and patient is sacred. That's sacred. That's you and another human being assessing your medical history, your medical needs. If these bills pass, that doctor would lose his license for practicing medicine. I find this horrifying, horrifying. We should be able to make our own medical decisions. This is a human right to choose what's best for our health with our doctors. And that is trying to be removed. And we can't let that happen. Peacefully and legally, we need to do everything possible to stop that.
So for those Californians who are concerned as well about the bills and the ongoing state of emergency, what can we do? How they can get involved?
There are several groups that work to advocate against these bills and to help people follow these bills. You have to, sometimes the legislature plays the shell game. They will tell you we're going to adjourn until Monday. And so we think, okay, well, the hearing's not going to happen today. And then my phone blows up and I find out they're back in hearing voting on this. And we find them. They try to play hide and seek and we find them. You know, find a group that is working to educate people. There's, you know, the People's Movement, there's Stand Up Sacramento, there's a voice for choice. There are parental groups, Let Them Breathe, Let Them Choose. There are several groups in California that are working to make sure that we have the information that we need to be able to make our voices heard. The People's Movement of California, we make sure there's a list that's pinned to the top of our page. And our co-admin, I call her our crunchy peanut butter mom. She probably hates it, but I do it anyway. She's been on this since March of 2020, fighting the mandates for her children. And so when these bills hit, she started monitoring these bills. And I was lucky enough to get her as a co-admin for the People's Movement of California page. She updates these bills daily. Every night between about 9:30 and 10 o'clock, information is available, and she goes on and we push out for the upcoming week. These are the bills that are going to be heard this week. These are their status. They're either being read for the second or third time, or they're going to be in hearing in this particular committee. This is the address if you want to be there. Here's the call-in information. Here's the deadline to oppose if you want to do it by letter through the website portal. So, you know, there are a lot of groups that are helping people get the information they need to be able to make their voices heard. And even if, bless your heart, even if you're in support of these things, you know, because not everybody agrees with us, but that information is there so that everyone can be heard, because the point is our voices should be heard and they are not being heard.
So my next question, we have been talking a lot about the bills and about the things that have been done wrong by the state government and our elected officials. Can you point to anything that has been done right since March of 2020?
Can I point to anything that has been done right? Oh my goodness, that's a very good question. I think the thing that has been done right is that there are a lot of people who are unifying because of all of the things that have happened. I think that even even out of the darkest moments in our lives and in our history, some beautiful things are born. And I believe that a change in our infrastructure, I believe a change in our government is occurring. The infrastructure in our government is occurring. I believe that a return to the idea that we are the United States of America, the people. We are the heart, we are the soul, we are the very, beating breath of America. And we have lost track of that. And our government officials, if you'll forgive me for stealing a quote, they have forgotten that they work for us. And the people are stepping forward and saying, you need to remember you work for us. And I think it's going to be a very interesting set of midterms based on, the fact that people are uniting over human rights issues, over protecting our children. And I think that, in the face of what is now a very large common enemy, that the people have stepped up and said no.
Those are great words. So right now you're also launching the George Washington Project.
Yes.
Can you tell us more about it?
Sure. The George Washington Project is designed to do a couple of things. One, we are asking those people who are united in, the idea that they want, first, we're trying to educate people that it's still there, because a lot of people don't know that the state of emergency is still there. They also may or may not understand that this is being abused, that it is now being used in a way that it was never intended to be used. And it is affecting people's lives in a negative manner, even if it's not my life. I'm not military, I'm not first responder, but these people are being, forced vaccinated in order to keep their jobs. Pilots, just it's affecting people's lives. And George Washington Project is designed to allow a venue for people to step forward and say, we want this to end. And there's an aspect to it that is going to bring attention, public attention to our elected officials in the House of Representatives to find out, do you still work for us? Here's how it works. We have invited everyone, and you can go to our website at usatpm.com or your local state, People's Movement page. And we have started a letter writing campaign, and we have provided instructions, and we've provided a letter, and there's obviously a space in there for people to write any of their own personal comments in their own handwriting. And we want you to mail this letter to the local district office of your House of Representative member in your district. In that, and some states are participating in this second part, and some are only doing the letter portion. But the second part of this is you would take a $1 bill, and we have a website to register that on, and that website, you can register that dollar bill so that we can all track it. So here's what's going to happen with that. You're going to take that dollar bill and you're going to put it into a second envelope that you will enclose in the main envelope with your letter and send it to the House of the House of Representative district office. There are instructions in that letter that tell that House of Representative member, you are to hold this for our couriers who are going to show up on June 11th, and we are going to ask you for your position on HJ 46, which is a bill that has been sitting in committee to end the state of emergency in the House of Representatives since 2021. The Senate has already initiated and passed a bill to end the state of emergency, and they did that within a couple of months. This bill has been sitting in the House of Representatives since 2021. So we want to know their position on this bill. we want them to vote yes to pass this bill and end the state of emergency. So our People's Movement couriers will show up to the offices with live streams, ask them their position on this bill, pick up those envelopes, and those dollar bills will be donated to a charity chosen by each state. Most of them would go to veterans associations.
Thank you. This is actually a very interesting concept. I think that
it's never been done before.
Yeah,
it's never been done before. So basically, what we're doing is we're putting them on the spot. So it only requires if and you know, hopefully this is true, if all of the Republicans support ending the state of emergency, and it looks like they do because they were able to pass it through the Senate pretty easily. Then we really only need eight on the other side of the aisle to decide that they would also like to end this state of emergency. So nationwide, we only need 8 Democrats to step forward and say, yes, we are willing to vote to end the state of emergency and push through House HJ 46. And we're hoping, which is often the case, that if 8 of them start to flip their votes, that there will be a snowball of flippage.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So there'll be live streaming, and there will be. I'm not a tech savvy person, so be patient with me here, but there's supposed to be a way for people to tune into a particular channel that will have all of these states available, their live streams, all in one place, so you can tune in to your state.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sheryl, for your time today.
Thank you.
It was, as always, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and share this video as it helps YouTube algorithms to show it to more people. And also, if you'd like to always stay tuned with independent news and reviews daily, please consider subscribing or joining our channel.
Thank you so much. I always appreciate my time with you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sheryl.